Good evening. My name is Jack Stillwagon, and I serve on the mission board of this church. Tonight, we welcome you to another presentation in, the What is Your Truth series entitled A Voice for Seniors. This program started over 30 years ago at First Baptist Church and features local leaders and organizations who have stories to share about the concrete needs in our community. Discussions include ways in which we can work together in love and service for the common good. The featured speaker for this evening's presentation is Senator Rachel May. Senator May represents Central New York's 53rd District, which includes most of the city of Syracuse, parts of Onondaga and Oneida counties, and all of Madison County. She chairs the Senate Committee on Aging and the Legislative Commission on Rural Resources, and is a member of the committees on Agriculture, Banking, Elections, Environmental Conversations, and Upstate Cities. A resident of Syracuse, Senator May had a successful career in higher education prior to running for political office. She started out as a professor of Russian language and literature at Stony Brook University, then earned tenure at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. She moved to Syracuse in 2001 and retrained in ecology and sustainability, becoming the Director of Sustainability Education at Syracuse University. Senator May earned a master's degree from Oxford University on a Marshall Scholarship and a PhD in Russian language and literature from Stanford University. She has also earned a master's degree from SUNY ESF. She has one daughter who graduated from Cornell University. Senator May is now serving in her second term. With Senator May tonight is Ingrid Gonzalez McCurdy, her senior policy advisor. Now, without further ado, let's give a warm Hamilton greeting to Senator May.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and hi everybody, it's great to see you all here. I apologize for keeping you waiting. It took me a little longer to get here from Syracuse than it should have tonight. I am so honored to be part of this series of conversations. I have the honor, as Jack said, of being the chair of the Committee on Aging in the New York State Senate. And I think historically that's been a pretty sleepy committee. There isn't a lot of legislation that comes through the aging law. Typically it's shunted over into health law or some other area of the law. But in the last few years, the Committee on Aging has become really important in the legislature because of the pandemic, elevating issues of seniors in this state, but also because the number of people, the population is aging in New York State, and more people qualify as over 55 and fall into our purview of the kinds of issues we look at, which include things like long-term care, but also, and crucially, the broader quality of life issues for people as we age. So complete streets and healthy communities and strong neighborhoods and accessible transportation and affordable housing and just a whole lot of issues that come together as we think about aging in New York State. So New York has the distinction of having been named by AARP the first age-friendly state in the country. That happened several years ago. And what that meant was that the state made the commitment that all the different agencies across the executive branch, whether it was environmental conservation or Parks and Recreation or Department of Labor or Department of Health, that they were all going to take into account concerns of an aging population. And one of the things we did this year that we managed to get money in the budget for was a master plan on aging, which is going to bring together, it's already bringing together people from all those different agencies as well as a lot of experts in the aging space to really try to think about how do we take this another step farther and really make New York comprehensively an age-friendly state. So I'm excited that that's underway. I'm also excited that we passed last year, my bill for a task force on reimagining long-term care, because we held some hearings about the long-term care workforce and about the state of long-term care in New York State, about nursing homes and the pandemic. And we learned a lot about what we're not doing well in New York. And so I passed this bill to create a task force that would really bring experts together to look at where they are doing it better and what we in New York can do better. And I'm excited that that is also underway and looking forward to seeing what they put together. But I'll talk to you about some of the initiatives that I've been part of that I'm proud of, and some of the things that we still really need to focus on. So it was really a little more than a year into my time in the Senate that the pandemic hit, and it hit nursing homes the hardest and took an enormous toll on our nursing homes. And that became my focus of attention for a long time. And even though I don't chair the Health Committee, which has the oversight of nursing homes, the Aging Committee does have oversight of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, which is a federally mandated program in which ombudsmen are supposed to be in every nursing home on a regular basis, taking complaints and trying to figure out what's working and not working in those nursing homes. And in New York, the Ombudsman program is staffed mostly by volunteers. Most of them are themselves retirees, and they didn't have access to the nursing homes in the pandemic. And so all of a sudden that oversight was lacking. And we saw not only was that oversight lacking, but because residents of nursing homes didn't have their loved ones visiting them either, there weren't any eyes and ears other than the people running the nursing homes who were really looking out for what was going on in nursing homes. And so I really worked very hard to strengthen our long-term care ombudsman program, but also to try to make sure that people could get visitors in nursing homes. Because not only were there no eyes and ears, people were dying of isolation as surely as they were dying of COVID. And we really needed to make sure that we address that issue. It was a long fight. It was my first really strong education and how hard it can be to get something passed over the objection of the executive branch, but we managed to do it because it was so important and there was such a groundswell of concern from family members about what was going on in nursing homes and about isolation that their loved ones were experiencing. So we did finally get that passed, and we were able to once again open the doors of nursing homes to visitors, to a few designated visitors that people could have who had to be there under the same conditions as the staff. They had to go through the same screening and wear the PPE and all of that, but at least they could get in and see their loved ones. And it was a big victory and something that took a lot of work by my staff and my colleagues to make that happen. So So I worked on the nursing home side of things, but I also worked very hard and have continued to work very hard on trying to make it so people don't have to go into nursing homes if they don't want to. And that means making sure we have long-term care, home care assistance. If anybody here has tried to get home care in the last couple of years, you know that there are very few people out there doing the work. It's really, really hard to find people to do the work, and even once you hire them, to keep them. And a big reason for that is because the state has nickeled and dimed the Medicaid system for such a long time, and home care workers only make minimum wage. So minimum wage upstate is $13.20 an hour. A lot of, there is a separate minimum wage for fast food, which is $15 an hour, but the home care workers are making $13.20 an hour. Many of them don't get benefits. They don't get paid for the time they're traveling to the homes that they're visiting. They don't get, mileage for their cars. And they have to show up. They have to show up in snowstorms, and when their children are sick, they still have to show up, because otherwise the people might not be able to get out of bed in the morning or take their life-saving medications or whatever services they're providing. And a lot of times they are absolutely critical to the people they are visiting. So having a full complement of home care workers in this state is a huge priority. And this past year, I worked with a coalition called the Caring Majority of home care providers, home care recipients, people with disabilities, and family members of older recipients of home care. And I gotta say, it was a beautiful thing. They were coming to Albany on a regular basis and really educating all of us about what it means to do that work, what it means to not have somebody who shows up to help you get out of bed in the morning if you need help getting into your wheelchair or getting to the bathroom. They were really educating all of us and telling their stories in really powerful and personal ways. And in the end, I don't think anybody in Albany was not focused, honestly, on fair pay for home care, which we were fighting for. And in the end, we got in the budget, not everything. We were hoping for a 50% raise above minimum wage for the home care workers. We got more like a 20% raise for them, but it was still the biggest investment that any state has made in home care workers ever, and it was an enormous victory. And so I have to say, in my time in Albany, working with that group of passionate, thoughtful, vulnerable people really telling painful stories, but willing to be out there and showing everybody around the state what it was, what was at stake, and why it was so important. It was a beautiful thing to be part of, and I'm really proud of where we ended up, although it's not the end, and we're going to keep fighting for getting the full 50%, because that was what economists estimated was necessary in order to get enough people to work in the field of home care. But at least for now, we had a real victory this year. And so that's another thing that I've been working on. We passed my bill for the program of all-inclusive care for the elderly, which is another thing. The PACE program exists in little pockets around the state, but there isn't a statewide program. And that's another way that people can stay out of nursing care, they can stay in their communities, but get the kind of comprehensive care that they need, which is not only better for them and their families and their communities, but is a whole lot cheaper for the state and for our taxpayers to pay for the services they need rather than for the huge costs of having someone in a nursing home. So those are some of the things on the long-term care side of things, but as I said early on, I have focused, and all of us who work in the aging arena really are focused on saying, you know, aging is not just about healthcare, aging is not just about long-term care, aging is about living fulfilling lives as long as we can. And so we have also been working on a whole range of other issues. This is something AARP is very focused on, the livable communities and complete streets, safe streets, lots of programs like that. So, for example, we passed a bill of mine that had languished for years and years and years, but we finally managed to get it passed through both houses of the legislature this year to allow a community like Hamilton to say, instead of having a 30-mile-an-hour basic speed limit here, we could set it at 25 miles an hour and have that be the normal speed limit for this village or this town. And the impact of that transportation analysts say is enormous in terms of the numbers of lives that are saved. Pedestrian lives, bicyclists' lives, the lives of people in wheelchairs or people pushing strollers or people on various kinds of alternative transportation. If you can reduce the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, you can save a lot of lives. So I'm proud of that. It was part of a whole package of safe streets legislation that we did that included kind of things that you wouldn't even think were not already in the law, but for example, making sure that when somebody gets a driver's license, the test, the education and the test include pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, so that our drivers know how to protect the others around them. It included, what else did it include? I know. It included one bill that was just raising the fines for dumping snow in handicapped parking lots, parking spaces, because that's something that happens all the time, and we need to discourage it. And so there were a lot of different pieces to that legislation that we were able to pass this year. I've also focused a lot on age discrimination, which I think is a little bit not on people's radar a lot of times. And honestly, in this country, we did pass the Age Discrimination Act, I think it's called, back in the 1960s. But even that act had a age limit. If when you hit 60, I think it was initially, the protections on age discrimination didn't protect you anymore. So even the act itself assumed that there was an age after which you weren't worthy of the kinds of employment protections that other people were. Little by little, they've raised and then eventually gotten rid of that upper age, but age discrimination is very real, and something like 60% of people over 40 have reported seeing age discrimination happen in their workplace or being the targets of age discrimination. And I can say, I actually, when I was first applying for college professor positions, I was 32 years old, and I had one interview where I thought the interview went really well, but the department chair called me and said, well, we hired somebody younger because we wanted somebody who would clean up after Russian club events, and we didn't feel like we could ask you to do that. So I thought, okay, I'm 32 and I'm too old for this job as a college professor. So it was, that I was too young to be covered under the age discrimination laws at that time, but that should have been something I could have sued them for, that kind of just flat out discrimination based on age is something people have taken for granted for a long time, but it is not okay. There may be some jobs that require a lot of stamina or a lot of strength, but there are plenty of people who maintain their stamina and their strength very late in life. And, it should be up to the person to say, that's the job that I can do, or that's the job I can't do, but it shouldn't be the employer just applying some blanket statement and saying, we're not going to hire anyone over 50 to do this, because people age at very, very different rates and in very different ways. And so I'm committed to making sure that our system of laws, it protects, that recognizes that fact, but also that we work on the attendant prejudices that people carry around against older people. And they are very real and very damaging. And I think a lot of what we saw in the nursing homes early in the pandemic, some of it was we just were blindsided and didn't know what to do, but some of it was a conscious decision that didn't really matter that much to protect people in nursing homes because they were going to die soon anyway, or, that their lives weren't as valuable as other people's lives. And so we clearly have to do better. And that's been a priority for me as the chair of aging. We've also done a number of things just to improve quality of life. There's a new senior passport for our state parks to encourage people to get out there and visit a lot of the different state parks. We have, Ingrid, you can prompt me if there are other things that we have done that are just the quality of life kinds of things for aging. But I'm really proud of the whole panoply of ways that we have approached the fact that New Yorkers are aging, and we want New Yorkers to age with grace and dignity and joy. And we don't want everybody fleeing to Florida. We want people to stay in New York and love this place and feel loved by this state. So that's really my spiel. I don't have a whole lot else prepared, but I would love to hear from you all about what are some of the issues that you would like to see us take up and how we can be helpful in the legislature and in the state government to address some of the issues that you see or elevate some of the wonderful things that that interest you or excite you. So is that okay? Can we take questions? Great. Oh yeah, so that's another initiative we've had is the older adult workforce. So a lot of people are working longer, people are starting new jobs. I ran for office for the first time when I was 60 years old, and you could too. It's lots of people are trying new things and being very successful, starting new businesses. We have a lot of older entrepreneurs in this state, and we're making a lot of money for the state, really important in our economy. So that's another initiative that we've taken, is to try to create an Office of Older Workforce Development, help people who have great ideas or want to start a new career to navigate some of the changes that things change really fast in our economy and in technology and that sort of thing, and so to make sure that there aren't barriers to people who want to stay active in the workforce in that way, as well as lots of opportunities for volunteerism. And I guess maybe I'll finish with one pet organization that I really love, and that's the Senior Companions Program, which is a program all across the state. There's one in Syracuse that I'm particularly familiar with, where they pair up retirees with somebody in a nursing home or somebody who's experiencing isolation in their home. And going and seeing these pairs of people who have been that matchmaking has been done by the organizations that run the Senior Companions Program, and seeing the friendships that develop and the ways they are really enriching each other's lives has been a really beautiful thing. So it's volunteerism for one member of the pair, but both of them are learning from each other and really gaining a lot from it. So I think there are a lot of different ways that we have to encourage people to stay active and to be making a positive difference for however long you want to stay active. So with that, let me take questions if people have questions or suggestions or ideas.
And so those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Bill Scott Wilson. I'm the pastor here. And if you have a question, just ask that you would raise your hand. Only rule is, make sure there's a question, not a lecture. And also, of course, and I think I know most of you here, just keep all your questions respectful. So would anyone like to ask a question? Carol?
Thank you, Senator May, very, very much for being here and for your fascinating talk. You mentioned transportation toward the beginning of your remarks, and I wanted to ask, are there any active efforts being made in terms of transportation for seniors, and the particular problem of seniors in the outlying rural parts of New York State? It's a big challenge for people to get around. And anyway, do you know of any efforts in that regard?
Yeah, thank you. Right, so I live in Syracuse, and there are particular kind of ways that you address the issues in a city, and it's very different in rural areas where people are far apart and often isolated. I do know the Area Agency on Aging, so I didn't talk about this, but the New York State Office for Aging does a huge amount of work for seniors in New York State, and they have in every county an area agency for aging, or AAA. And here in Madison County, there is definitely a program of recruiting people to volunteer to serve as drivers. And I don't remember the name of the program. RSVP, that's right. And that's another one where the drivers get to know the people they drive around. And I've been to, picnics where they were all there and really seem to enjoy each other's company, as well as providing a service like that. So sometimes it has to be that kind of almost grassroots level support. One of the things in the city that I'm working on is bus rapid transit. So we do have